thank you for joining. We're pleased that you're here. As I mentioned, there's about 150 people who've registered. We have staff, we have people using services, and we have family who have joined. We have spent many, many months, these are some of the things, I'll just repeat those now, seeking input from many people across the organization toward our strategic plan. And we're excited that you're here, and we're excited that you're going to share with us. You can advance to the slide. And so we're going to talk a little bit about why we're building a plan together, why that is important, what is the co-design process, why that's important to us, all of the ways that we've sought input. We're going to dive into that as a reminder for some and a information for others. And then we're going to talk about what are the things that we've prioritized and why are those important to us. And we're going to look for you to be able to speak back to us about some of that information so far. Go ahead, next slide. And now I would love to introduce Janet Noel-Annabel. And Janet is our Chief Executive Officer, and you had a chance to connect with Janet during our 10 Everybody Engages sessions. We were thrilled to spend time with you across the organization, all throughout Ontario and Saskatchewan. And so let's be sure that Janet can unmute her device, Catalina, and Janet will speak to some of these things.
Thanks so much, Eugene. Can everybody hear me okay? Can someone give me a thumbs up? Excellent. You know, it's funny how fast we forget some of these Zoom processes, and, you know, we were so dependent on them for so long, and then all of a sudden we're back together, and I had a lot of trouble. Maybe some of you did as well, connecting in tonight. So thank you to the team who are so willing and able to help. It is absolutely great to be with you all tonight, using this wonderful tool that we have in front of us to bring us over miles and miles and miles together to look at the results of the amazing work that we did together through our co-design Everybody Engages sessions. You know, we're going to speak a little bit more about the process and the things that we heard and the things that we talked about. But, you know, it was pretty, maybe magical is the word, to be able to sit. And there's one of the pictures on the screen here that reminds me of all of us sitting together, people who use our services, our phenomenal team members, and families of the people who we support. And, you know, we shared perspectives, we shared ideas, and then we recognized that maybe some of us had a little bit of different vantage points to be able to talk about the same thing. And it was really, truly magical to be able to think together to both inform the information, inform the plan that we're building, but also be informed about our different perspectives. So just super grateful. Thank you so much. It was a whirlwind of a tour. Naima, I hope that you have rested over the rest of the summer, because I know that Naima and her team were doing a lot of the heavy lifting of making sure we had awesome coffee and snacks to sustain us, and a wonderful lunch to enjoy together, as well as all of the hard work of gathering all of the different things that we talked about. So yeah, it was a fantastic process, and, you know, really important to mark this as the beginning, not the end. This is the beginning of how we want to shift our posture as an organization and really think collaboratively and together about how we design services in the future. Maybe next slide, please, Naima. As you can see, there's lots of numbers of people, well over 1,000 different engagement opportunities that were fantastic. And again, just to start, we know that there's thousands of people who have yet to give us their perspective, have yet to maybe sit at a table or fill out a form or fill out a survey. So again, as a starting point, I am absolutely thrilled with the level of engagement that we had, and we will continue to reach out and invite people to continue to engage with us in the years to come. So, you know, as the sector evolves, Caris has recognized the need for this new approach of strategic planning. We really want to ground our work that we do together, our planning, our roadmaps that we build in lived experience and collaborative ideas. Caris Disabilities has partnered with the amazing folks, Elizabeth, at Davis Pear Consulting to design and deliver an inclusive co-design process that has engaged people-supported families, employees and team members, and leaders across Ontario and Saskatchewan. Through in-person workshops, virtual sessions, and multiple other ways, Caris has co-created its 2026 to 2029 strategic priorities with the people who are most impacted by its work. You know, the work that is happening is in a context of sector, I'd say, flux, change, hopefully new ways of providing supports to people. There is a reality of thousands and thousands, over 50,000 in Ontario, who are waiting for support and services. There is extremely limited housing and employment options for people. We've had workforce shortages and challenges in recruitment that are real and impactful. And there's shifting and growing expectations from government and from society at large as to how people with developmental disabilities live great lives in their community and benefit from inclusive, person-directed models of support. I'm going to pass this over to who? I have to look at my notes. I think I'm going to pass this over to
Elizabeth.
Eugene? Elizabeth, sorry.
Yeah.
My notes ended. I'm going to pass this over to Elizabeth now, who's going to talk a little bit about the process that we went through in this wonderful consultation. But I'm going to come back to talk to you about what we heard and how we have sort of synthesized those into priorities for our next strategic plan. Over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Janet. And you're going to see tonight, there's going to be a lot of different people coming on the screen. We're trying to make this exciting and entertaining for you tonight. Before we get into kind of the approach that we took, Janet talked a little bit about Caris's new focus around trying to shift the way that we go about planning for what is important for Caris as an organization. And that really is grounded in the lived experiences. And the best way to be able to collect that information is through co-design. And some of you may have heard about it at the last webinar, or maybe have been able to participate in one of the engagement opportunities that Janice was talking about. And for some of you, co-design might be new tonight. And so we thought, before we get into all of the information about the sessions and the process, let's talk about co-design for a moment, and let's do a little bit of a knowledge check to see what people remember from the last time I was here to talk about co-design. So we can go to the next slide. I'm actually going to invite people to use the chat, and we're going to give you a little bit of a moment to think about what co-design means to you. And if you don't know what co-design means, that's okay. You can just write that you don't know. But if there's a word that come to mind when you think about co-design, please type that into the chat. And so we'll see what people remember about what co-design actually really is. Take a moment. Use the chat function at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to write anything that comes to mind. Together, collaboration, a lot of collaboration. That's good. Being heard, listening, shared vision, collaboration, inclusion, working together, participation, collaboration, side by side. I like this a lot. Might actually use some of these words the next time I have to talk about co-design to people. Everyone sharing, working together, representation, so the people impacted by the decision have a say in it. That's great. Well, sounds like you guys are the expert in co-design now. Equal opportunity, collaborative design, sharing, working as one, sharing ideas. This is great. Excellent. Wonderful. Naima, if you want to go to the next slide. I think everybody in the chat is exactly right. So co-design is really about a mindset that we bring to the work. It is not a one moment in time, one done deal. And I think Janet and Eugene both kind of alluded to that. This entire process has been months in the making, and tonight is not the end of it. And so today is another opportunity for you to provide input and feedback into this process. And we really worked really hard to ensure that we were prioritizing lived experience throughout the entire process of engagement. And what does that mean when we say lived experiences? We really mean the people that have lived experiences. So that means families, that means people supported, that means the staff, that means everybody involved. And that's why we were really, really intentional in bringing everybody at the table throughout this process. And so co-design again happens over time. It is not a moment in time. It's really about building relationship, building trust, having the people that are impacted by the change be part of the conversation. And so why are we taking this approach? Because it takes so much time, it takes so much effort. The reason why we're taking a co-design approach is because it really matters. It really helps us elevate the voices of the people that have lived experiences. It helps us make more inclusive decision as an organization, and it really helps us build trust and relationship, which is really what CARES is all about. So co-design is really an approach to designing with and not for people. So I'm now going to pass it along to Eugene, I believe.
Yes, you got it.
You go. Perfect.
And so we been on a journey, a long journey, and we were going to try and put on here like a picture of Ottawa where we started, and a picture from Regina, and a picture from the north where we saw trees and rocks and water. And you can see in there the Big Nickel in Sudbury where we saw those things. It was a fantastic traveling all across. That wasn't the only journey. And I love Zoom as well, and we can see all kinds of different faces. And so I can make your faces take up the majority of my screen, and the little window of the slide take up a small amount. And so I really would love for people to tell me, like, Naima and David met together with you where you meet. And so that was the round one, the engagement. And so met together with family members in community advisory networks. Are you on a community advisory network when you met together with Naima? You can put up your hand. She met together with people at Our Voices Matter in the council and in community meetings where people met. She met with survey people in church partnerships and sent out surveys to people. We had conversations with partners in organizations. None of you are here doing on that one. Round two, we sent an activity home with a number of people who registered to saying, you might use this to prepare for when you come to one of the Everybody Engages session. And so I'd love to know kind of how many people came to one of our Everybody Engages sessions where we joined with you in a community, in one of these 10 communities across the organization, where we met together with people face to face and had great conversations. Loved those conversations. Then we spent some time and took all of that information and started to synthesize some of those things and really started to break down what are all of these different things that we're hearing from across the organization. And so we looked to look at that stuff and started to develop a little bit of the plan. We met together with small groups of people there and worked together. And now we're spending time, we've posted this information onto our external website. And so you have access to this. You can have your friends and your family take a look at this to say, what are those 3 things that we're prioritizing? We're going to put that link up at the end of the presentation just to make it easy for you to find. What are the 3 areas that we're prioritizing? And those are broad areas. And the work that we're doing under those things, we're really looking for people to say, here's what we could do to achieve those things, or here's some feedback on those things that we prioritize. But it's been a fantastic co-designing journey that we have spent together, and we've been excited to do that with you. You can progress to the next slides. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about the approach that we've taken and the things that were important for us. You can go to the next slide. As we engaged, we really wanted to make sure that we made those things work for people. And so we tried to do things that were really intentional. When we looked for places We wanted to make sure that they were good and accessible. And we talked about accessibility when people came, and we wanted the language and the way in which we gathered with people also to be something where everybody knew that they belonged and knew that their input was important. We looked to make sure that all different voices were a part of those conversations. So we sought to elevate the voice of family members who didn't know exactly, how do I participate in this? We really wanted to make sure that we listened to families and people using services, direct support professionals, alongside of other layers and people within the organization. We've worked in a way throughout this around transparency to say, we want to talk about these things together. And so the input that we gathered during the first meetings that we did, we used that and talked about, here are some of the things that people are telling us. And some of those things were informative messages that weren't super easy for us to hear, but super important for us to talk about. So that was really valuable. We spent time around tables and learning together to just make sure that we were really intentional, and it says purposeful, in making sure that we got all of the information. Some of that was listening to different perspectives. We did different exercises, and we'll remind you of some of those or inform you of some of those, where we wanted to make sure that every voice was heard and that people could indicate what they agreed with and disagreed with at the table as well. And so our process, we worked hard to be inclusive, and all of that led us to what we believe to be a solid, co-designed process. And as Elizabeth was just mentioning, making sure that all people were able to bring their lens or their lived experience into that conversation. And so we're thankful for that time that we got to spend together. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about the ways that we did that as an information for some and a reminder for others. We were excited to send out surveys and did the virtual focus group. I won't spend too much time there. But then when we gathered, we used the input from those important meetings. And you might remember we had 10 different stations set up around in every one of the different places where we met, where we had full sheets of paper and lots of Post-it notes where people wrote their own input on their Post-it note and posted it on the paper. Or they told the facilitator the input that they wanted to share and put it on the wall. And that was information that we then took pictures of, and that information really informed where we're going from here. The visioning, the future visioning, was the second activity. And that was really an exercise where we said to people, like, think about, what is Caris experiencing in 3 years down the road from now? Or what am I wanting to make sure that I experience because of Caris's support in 3 or 5 years down the road from now? And so people gave input into, people drew pictures, people wrote stories, people shared examples of things that were important to them about what they wanted to experience in the future. And then the last activity, when we were gathered around in those 10 sessions, we had different cards, and the cards had on them little descriptions of input that we had sought along the way. And we were ordering those cards as to what was super important and what might be something that we would focus on later. Still important, but something that we might not prioritize at first. And everybody around the table, we would send out the cards, people would read the cards, and we would work together to try and prioritize. And then people would take a number of different stickers, and using Dotocracy would point to and leave a sticker on the things, on the areas that they thought themselves should be most prioritized. And so that was an area where everyone was able to provide their meaningful input to the work. I'll pass it back to you, Elizabeth, to talk about some of the feedback that we heard.
Thank you, Eugene. And as Eugene mentioned, we collected thousands and thousands of sticky notes and insights and feedback. And what that really meant when these sessions were completed is Nema and the team and myself, we all went back and we went through every single piece of feedback. And what we did is, across all of the information that we collected from people supported, from family members, as well as employees, we came up with 10 themes of what are the things that we keep hearing over and over across all of these people? And so we're going to talk a little bit about what we heard and what those themes look like. And then we'll talk a little bit about how that feeds into the priorities for CARES as an organization. As I'm talking about some of the things that we've heard in the session, I'll invite people to either use the chat and you can comment on whether or not, that you agree with what I'm saying, you disagree with what I'm saying, you think, it resonates with you. So you can use the chat if you'd like, or you can also use the little reaction button. So at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little icon that says react. And so you can either use a little heart emoji or thumbs up, whatever you'd like, if you agree with some of the things that I'm talking about. Hopefully some of this will resonate with you. This is all based on what we've heard from all of the engagements that we conducted over the last 10 months or so. So the first one is around personal choice and autonomy. So what that means is that we heard from people supported specifically that you guys want to make more choices about your everyday life as well as your long-term decision. So that really means having a say around food, your clothes, routine, relationships, your goals that you want to achieve in life. And so that really means having real choices and flexibility in your routine and your funding. And that, is something that I think we've heard across all of the groups that was really important. How do we provide opportunities for people to have more personal choice over their own life? And so that's really something that came through very clearly. People asked about, getting some clarity about passport funding and having more control over the funding. We heard that folks really value respectful and trust-based relationship with the staff as well. Folks want to have accessible communication, including for those that have nonverbal abilities as well. And so, we heard all kinds of things around how do we provide more choice for people. The second theme that we've heard about was community participation and inclusion. And I think that's not a surprise to anybody here today that, it was very clear that people across the board wanted to have an active role to play in the community. We heard from so many self-advocates at the session about how they get involved, how they volunteer, how they start businesses. And I think that was just something that people shared. Folks want to have opportunities to participate in their community and feel included. And so that really means going above and beyond just having access and visibility in the community to really feeling like you belong and you can bring a contribution within your community. And so, but we heard also about barriers. Like there are real barriers for people to really feel like they can be useful in their community, and that's really about transportation. And we heard about staffing limitation as well. We heard about stigma and the lack of inclusive spaces in community, as well as just being unaware of some of the local opportunities as well. The third one is about home and housing support. So we heard across the board that a house should feel like a home. And that really means that it should feel like a safe, welcoming place that you can personalize. And what that means is you can make it your own. You can put your posters on the wall, you can paint the wall the colors that you want, you can make it your own home. And so that was something that was really important for people across the board. We also heard, if you could go back. Thank you. We also heard that people really value choices in roommate and decor. They want to feel comfortable in their environment. They also want the home to be accessible for their needs. And we heard a lot about as well, getting some support to prepare for big transitions as well. We can go to the next slide. And I see there's some questions in the chat. We will have a dedicated time for Q&A. So we'll definitely get back to the question at the end of the session. And again, feel free to write in the chat if there's things that resonate with you, or use the thumbs up or the art emoji or anything that you'd like. Financial autonomy. So what that means is having more control and just know a little bit more about your money. And so we heard that people want to have a bit more control over their money, and that includes getting some support and help around budgeting, shopping, saving. Sometimes, you just want to have a goal and you want to save a little bit of money to achieve something. And so getting some of that support is something that folks were really interested in getting. As well as understanding what is the available funding for you. And so what does that look like? People also wanted to have some clear communication and training. So we heard that specifically for staff and families on things like passport. I think it's a bit of an on gray zone where people don't really have enough information to really understand how it works. And so folks were really clear that they wanted a bit more communication and training about this. Employment and meaningful contribution. I will say employment is definitely a theme that came across loud and clear across all of the sessions. And so we heard that people want to have real jobs and they want to have something that matched their skills and their interests. And we actually saw great examples of people sharing, businesses that they had started or little jobs that they were able to get in their neighborhood by just being proactive and going out and not taking no for an answer. But we've heard that a lot of people that Caris supports would like to have similar opportunities. We also heard that people would love to have some more job readiness training. So really getting some support around if you do want to get a job, how do you get prepared for that? So getting some support around coaching, getting ready for a job, maybe some support with interviews or, putting a resume together, those types of things. And on the job support as well in order to have a successful experience. Future planning and goal setting. I think folks were really, really eager to set goals for the future and track that progress and really dream big, which personally, I thought that was an incredible moment to hear so many people share what their dreams look like. When we were talking about future visioning for the organization, a lot of people had big dreams for their life. And so, definitely a theme that we heard over and over, from moving homes to planning vacation to starting a business. Staff experience and capacity. Staff want to feel valued and supported and connected. The work that Caris employees do every day is hard work. It's very hard work. You need to be motivated and to come in every day and do the hard work. And we've heard across the board that there's just a desire to feel recognized and value for that work. And so definitely a theme that came across from pretty much all of the sessions that we had is really kind of taking into consideration that we need to make sure that our employees feel valued, supported, and connected in the work that they do. And that really means, staff having fair pay, manageable workloads, professional development opportunities. We heard a lot about clear communication as well within the organization, a positive workplace culture, all things that are very valid and I think are really important as Caris think about the priority for the next coming years. Recruitment and retention of great staff. I think Janet talked about this earlier in the webinar. We're operating in a context where there's a lot of workforce related shortages. And so it's important for us or for Caris as an organization to really think about how do we keep great people in the organization. And that really starts with, being kind, ensuring that we build strong relationship with the staff, wage parities across region, clear job expectation as well, leadership development. There's all kinds of things that you've asked us that you want to see in the future. And we've really listened and included some of these in the themes that we're talking about today. Quality of support. So we've heard across the board that, we need to continue to do great and pursue even better quality of support in the future. And that means, people having time to make meaningful connection, continuous training and communication, cultural safety, providing some peer mentorship opportunities, having family involvement as part of the core service offering of Caris, and shared accountability. So quality of support is something that obviously is top of mind for Caris and will continue to be. And the last one, collaboration and communication. We heard that people want tools and practices to help them do their job better. And so that really, includes staff having the tools that they need in order to do their job, but also that includes the people supported and having tools in order for them to be able to communicate what they need to the staff that works with them. And so this is just a snapshot into these thousands and thousands of insights that we've collected over the entire process that kind of fall under some of these overarching theme, and hopefully that resonates with folks. And I know that Eugene will be talking about as well today around how that fits into the plan moving forward. All right. Before I pass it over to Eugene, one more kind of slide on the screen here, just to show you how we are taking all of the insights that we've collected so far and really trying to connect the dots. And so what does that mean for Caris moving forward? How do we prioritize on 1, 2, 3 areas that really helps us get better as an organization? And so this is just a slide to show you how we took all of the things that we've heard, which fell under these 10 different themes that we talked about, and how they connect to the priorities that Janet will be talking about in a few minutes, and Eugene as well. And so we've talked to over 1,000 people that have interacted with this project so far, which is great. And out of all of the themes, all of the information, we were able to land on 3 key priorities. And I know that Naima also wants to add a couple of things here. So I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Just to reiterate that we followed a very rigorous process to ensure that all the insights that we got from the different engagements are embedded into the 3 priorities that Janet will be speaking to more, to build that assurance that we have not sort of narrowed down, but rather represented all of those within those 3 priorities. And so as we dive into those 3 priorities, you will be able to see elements of the 10 themes and other insights built into those priorities moving forward. So just wanted to add that, and I will pass it over to Eugene.
Fantastic. Thank you, Naima. And thank you for some of the questions and the comments. We will address many of those questions and comments that are coming up with. I love some of the ideas around how do we give people a high five. We have some questions around Passport, and we will look to address that one as well. We don't want people to leave these not knowing some of these things. These were literally the live conversations that we were having in many of the rooms. I remember drawing pictures, describing for people some of the different ways that people have access to resources, both the funding that Caris gets for resources, the Passport resources that a person has, and how do those help support the costs that that person has in living out a great life. The new Canada Disability Benefits Act, the ODSP resources that are available for people. And so we'll definitely talk about some of those things as well. And go to the next slide. As mentioned, Naima and her team work together to seek input from people across the organization. And I just want to thank Naima. I want to thank David. Mariana spent time together with us. And Elizabeth had a few people from Davis Pier that also joined us. And Janet spent the time going around each one of these different 10 sessions with us, really seeking input from all kinds of people all over the organization. And so just a moment to say thank you for the fantastic effort that was put into making sure that we heard from those more than 1,000 people kind of face to face. Janet's going to share with us, as we've talked about in that last slide, kind of the 3 priorities that we've summed up all of those things in. As Naima said, we didn't distill and decide against some things necessarily, but all of those things really wrap themselves into these 3 priorities for us as an organization. So Janet's going to talk about those things. Then we're going to dive into each one of those priorities a little bit more deeply, and then we'll sum up and look to have some Q&A, answer some of the questions that have come up. Janet, can I turn to you?
Absolutely. Thanks, Eugene. And thanks, everybody. I have to say, I'm I'm quite interested in watching the different icons float up. So if my eye goes off when I'm speaking, it's just because some other cool, Patricia, I think you've got the best so far. So thank you for that. Yeah, really important. You know, our job as leaders in the organization is to listen and then to do. So in order to listen, in order to do, we have to think about not only what we're told, but what we're being told. What does that indicate? What does that tell us about what Caris needs to do and how we provide services and how we equip people to provide those services to meet the objectives, to meet the expectations of our customers, of the people who use our services, our families, our communities, the government, our regulators, all of those folks who have an interest in the supports that we provide. And so, as Eugene mentioned, we synthesized what we heard and what we talked about into 3 categories. The first is that we're going to, over these next 3 years, really invest in our teams. Our strategic intent is to foster an empowered and diverse workforce that delivers excellent person-directed supports. We believe that by caring for our people and our teams, it will result in the delivery of exceptional services. When our employees thrive, so do the people we support. So that's our first objective. Our second objective, and our first objective lays the foundation for our second objective, and that's to deliver high quality, person-directed services. We will strengthen our foundation for quality to deliver flexible, person-directed services that promote choice and responsibility. We believe that every voice matters, and by co-designing services and building consistent structures, we will respond to people's self-direction with innovative supports that reflect our mission. And finally, I think something that has just really been on my heart, that we've probably always been focused on, always been considering, but through this strategic plan, I really believe that Caris is at a point where we need to invest in engagement and deepening relationships, important relationships. And we're going to strengthen relationships with local Christian communities and churches, with partners, with government folks, with advocates, with people in our communities. We're going to advocate and engage in fostering belonging and inclusion for people with disabilities. We believe that local communities are a place where everybody belongs. And by deepening our values-based collaboration within those communities, within churches, within relationships with government and other supporters, that we'll be able to influence thinking in communities to be more inclusive and welcoming of people with disabilities. We're going to unpack these now. So I'll turn it over to Eugene to unpack the first one.
Thank you, Janet. And so the first one really is about our people. And on behalf of Jennifer for a moment today, Jennifer is our Vice President of Human Resources, who spent time with us in these Everybody Engages sessions, and also at the same time leveraged an employee survey that we had done and met together with dozens and dozens of employees across the organization, seeking even further input so that we could deeply understand how do we work together to invest in our teams. And so here's some of the things that we heard. The Caris employees are deeply committed to the people we support and want to feel equipped and empowered in their roles. And that employees desire clearer supervision and fair workloads and more time for meaningful connections. They value opportunities for growth, peer support, and leadership development, and see potential in evaluating roles to strengthen the coaching and mentoring. They want to have the right tools and improved communication to help employees stay focused on what matters most, and that is supporting people. Those are some of the things that we heard as we were seeking input toward what do we do going forward. And so the goals to empower teams in providing great supports to people is we want to take a good look at our first level supervisors so that we can clarify those roles so that they're able to lead and deliver to support their teams to deliver high quality supports. There's a whole number of things that we've been doing in that area over the last years, but we really want to spend some time in figuring that one out well so that managers have time to be able to coach and mentor and lead and support their staff. There's all kinds of responsibilities that managers find themselves doing, administrative tasks and those things. But how do we bring that human connection back into their work and reinforce that so that teams are able to work really well with each other? We talked as we were going about communication. We want to spend some time in strengthen communication, to foster transparency, trust, and connection. To invest in employees' well-being. And I saw some really great ideas even in the chat there. Those are the kinds of input that we're looking. What are those quick wins that we can do together with people so that they know that I'm on the right page, I'm doing things well, people are recognizing the work that I'm doing well, my supervisor has the opportunity to give me feedback, and so does the organization, acknowledging the things that we're doing well. We also want to make sure that we're investing in employee well-being and psychological safety. The work that we do, the environment that we're living in, the world that we're living in has all kinds of things that are heavy. How are we coming alongside and working with people so that they're well and at their best to turn and provide great supports to people? And that means having great tools and systems and resources to be able to do that well, that they understand what are those competencies that they're in their current role, but they also know what are the future opportunities that they might have as well. And that we also, as a Christian organization, have a deep belief in the value of all people, and so want to continue our work in fostering a culture of equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging across all levels of the organization, because we know that the diversity of our teams, the places where people have come from, who do their work, and the various generations of people that we have that are doing their work, the wide range of ages of people is real value add to the work that we have, and how do we leverage that really well in our teams? We know that those things will lead to employees feeling well-equipped, supported, and connected, resulting in improved service quality and a workplace people choose to grow in. And that's what we're looking forward to, learning together how might we even work well in those areas. I will turn to Dwayne to talk about our services.
Thanks, Eugene. Most people have multiple slides that they're sharing from. I have one, so I'll appreciate as many reactions as you have, even if it's not relevant in the moment. It'll just encourage me on my way. I'll be a bit brief as well. Most everything has already been said that I wanted to share. So, well, that's an awesome emoji thing. But what we heard was that people supported want real choice in their lives. They want choice in daily routines, in where they live and who they live with, in employment. They're seeking more autonomy and responsibility in decision-making, in their finances, and they want more consistent, respectful, and person-directed supports. Families and employees emphasize the importance of flexible services, inclusive environments, and a better matching process. And there's a strong desire for expanded access to respite, to community support programs, to real community participation that fosters belonging and contribution. And so we want to be able to deliver quality services, and that'll require integrating structures and shared practices to ensure consistency in service delivery. That's a long sentence, that last one. So we've set goals up to co-design and deliver high quality person-directed services along the lines of the bullet points that are on the slide that you see. And our ultimate outcome is that people supported would experience an improved service quality and greater choice, and that'll result in a higher satisfaction for them. We want to see wait lists reduced, particularly in Ontario, where wait lists are a big issue, more so than Saskatchewan, and that services are delivered with increased consistency and responsiveness. And I'll leave it at that, and I think I'm passing it to you, Janet.
Thanks so much, Dwayne. And I'll just round out the 3 priorities with regards to our partners. Partners see Charis as a trusted collaborator and a values-driven leader. Church communities are eager to grow in inclusion and connection. And while government partners welcome Charis's collaboration in designing solutions that improve individual and while, sorry, I'm reading my notes here improperly. Government partners welcome our collaboration in designing solutions around improved individualized supports. Families and employees believe that Charis can help shape systems that are more flexible, transparent, and person-directed. Strengthening these relationships and continuing to advocate for inclusive, person-directed systems will amplify inclusion and belonging for people with developmental disabilities. You know, one of the conversations I had specifically, personally, was with a number of directors with the Ontario government, and they are responsible for service transformation. And at one point I was asking, you know, what can we do? What would their input and what would they tell us to really consider in our next strategic plan? And one of the directors kind of grabbed the mic and said, listen, Janet, you guys, we have such limited capacity to shape perspective. We can fund programs. I think they should fund a lot more programs. They can make, you know, announcements around new ideas. But really, organizations like Charis, through our employees, our incredible employees, through our community connections in local communities, through advocacy within churches, we can change how society sees a person with a developmental disability. We can change how a doctor responds to a person with a developmental disability through our approach. We can change how a police officer responds to a person with a developmental disability for significantly better outcomes and inclusive communities. And, you know, I really took her comments to heart and thought about, you know, we do have a role for sure. Our primary role is to provide excellent services to people through well-qualified, well-equipped teams that are led and coached by phenomenal leaders. All that is very true. But we can also posture ourselves in community to shape how people see people with disabilities. And, you know, I'm super excited that we're identifying this in our strategic plan, not only our opportunity, but our responsibility as an organization to do that. And our hope is what happens is not only are we a great service provider, but do people have great lives in their communities? Do voters hold government to task to fund developmental services in ongoingly through investments and recognition of the important return on investment that they get, communities get, that society gets when people get good services? When families, when their children don't have, sorry, I'm on my my little soapbox, but when families know that when their child graduates from high school on a Friday, on Monday, there's something meaningful and important that they get to do in their community, not to go and sit on a wait list for 10 or 20 or 30 years, right? We have work to do in that regard, and it's through changing society's perspective on people with disabilities that will change the way people vote and advocate, and hopefully, I'm hopeful that government will shift its priority in how they see the sector that we all work within and care so much about. With that, I'm actually going to sum up. I know we've gone a little bit longer than we wanted to, and we really want to have a few minutes to answer some questions, particularly want to answer the question around passports that somebody had in the chat. Eugene, did you want us to switch to questions now, or can I make my concluding comments? So maybe that's at the end of the webinar.
Sure. Why don't we switch to some of the comments and the questions now?
Perfect. Perfect.
You maybe started with going into talking about the passport? Great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Passports has been a very challenging journey for all of us, without a doubt. We work within a base-funded service system that has been eroding for years and years and years with a lack of investment from government. And the things that we were able to do with people 15 years ago, we can't afford to do with people today. We were thrilled when more and more and more people had access to passports funding. And we've been navigating through challenging years to figure out what our base-funded services pay for and what what people's passports can be, through their choice, be used to pay for.
Yes.
So things that, sorry, I think someone just unmuted. Thanks, Brian. No worries.
Hi, Janet.
Clarifying just how we help people through their independent facilitated plans. Can you hear me okay? It says my connection just went unstable.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was unstable for a moment, but you're back. Yep.
Okay. Working through people's planning to identify what services are going to be funded through their base funded services and what services will be provided through passports. Thank you for your question. All questions are welcome. And I know that the folks in the district through which that family member participates have already been involved and are working to ensure that there's full understanding of how those things integrate together. So thank you for that. I think there was another question after that. If I just pop over to the chat.
Yeah, by all means. Janet, there were some other questions kind of about our personal choice and autonomy and our personal planning process and those kinds of things, and how so many, the variety of people who use words to communicate, people who don't use words to communicate, how do we navigate with them? In how have we been maybe? And then how does this next plan address some of those things as well?
Yeah, it's a great point, Sarah, that you made. The reality is that we support, I don't know, upwards of 2,000 people, 2,000 unique, different people who have different support needs and requirements and capacities. And I believe that our planning process seeks to find and welcome and be directed by every person's voice, whether they use words to communicate, whether loved ones and preferences help define what those needs are. But it is a journey. And, I know we have incredible teams that know people super well. I know families love and deeply are committed to their loved ones to participate and inform those processes. And more, just being creative in how we listen to people as we develop plans with them, as we see how those plans work out, how we check in year 2 and year 3 to make sure that we're meeting the objectives and goals. And I think another really big part of that, and I'm sorry, it looks like we're coming to our end, but the idea of not being the sole entity in someone's life. We often talk about over these last decades, we've tried to move more and more into being a part of someone's life, not being the entirety around somebody, and welcome others, whether it's loved ones and friends and families and faith communities and neighbors and all of those people to be a part of having really good lives in their community, whatever their level of capacity is. Certainly it's a real consideration, Sarah, and I'm so glad that you raised it. Eugene, was there another question that I can quickly answer before we have to wrap up? Just want to respect everybody's time.
By all means, maybe we can talk a little bit briefly about our connection, our unique, as a Christian organization, our unique opportunity to engage with people who are a part of the faith community. So we navigate with the faith community in a really important way, and through that is sometimes churches or Christian schools, but we also know the value of the people that are in those places. There are employers, there are librarians, there are first emergency responders, there are doctors, there are so many varied pieces. And at Caris Disability Services, we have a unique opportunity to engage oftentimes with that broad community, albeit a Christian community, perhaps in a way that some other organizations might not see as their kind of relationships. Is there kind of anything more that you might offer kind of towards some of the conversation that's in the chat about that at all?
Yeah, I think you did it really well, actually, Eugene. But it is true. And I think local communities and local connections are of critical importance in all of our lives, including people with developmental disabilities. And churches is one of those places where people connect. We often hear from churches that they've got a youth group that they're struggling to include a young person with autism, and they would really love for us. Is there a way that we could equip their leaders, equip their pastors to know how to work with somebody to include them? I think that there are, you said it, Eugene, we've got the church and the steeple. Remember when we were kids, we did this and we open up the doors and there's all the people. Changing society's perspectives is one person at a time. It is one community at a time. It is one neighborhood at a time. And we'll try to take all of those spots that we find ourselves in, whether it's a church, whether it's a neighborhood, whether it's a political debate, whether it's a budget submission, to remind the people around that our communities truly are best when everybody gets to belong and contribute. So thank you for that. And, with that, I'm gonna wrap up. We are celebrating our 60th year as an organization. I'm really proud of the work that we do every day. I think that there is incredible things happening in people's lives. Do we lack resources? We sure do. Do we lack capacity? Sometimes we sure do. Do we lack funding or even knowledge? Sometimes, absolutely we do. But this strategic plan, amongst all of the other work that we do every day, is intended to address some key priority areas that we believe will improve services to people, will ensure that our employees are well equipped and have capacity and all the skills that they need to do their important work, and that we build out that capacity for others to see people with developmental disabilities as valid citizens, contributors, and friends and loved ones. Our 60th anniversary theme is, let me just pull it up, make sure I get the right wording, is a scripture verse from Psalm 33:11, and it says, "But the plans of the Lord stand firm forever, the purposes of his heart through all generations." We, Charis, Christian Horizons before us, was built on the fact that all people are created in God's image, and therefore all people are valued and loved by God. And we work in communities across Canada and communities around the world to see that so every day. Thank you so much for joining us. Please, if you haven't signed up for our annual community meetings, please do so. We will provide some good report about what we've been up to this past year and what we have ahead of us this coming year. And really look forward to seeing you at that, as well as other forums in the future. Huge shout out to Naima and Elizabeth and all the team at both of their collective groups for their great work on this. And thank you all of you for taking your time out of your evening to join us tonight. Take good care and God bless.